You could be harming your baby's brain right now. And the scariest part is, you probably have absolutely no idea it's happening. Not because you're a bad parent, not because you're making obvious mistakes, but because some of the most damaging things we do to developing brains look completely normal, even beneficial on the surface. Today we're going to talk about what's really going on inside your baby's brain during those first critical years, what research is telling us about the hidden threats, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. Stay with me because this information could genuinely change the trajectory of your child's life. Let's start with something that sounds almost impossible. Your baby's brain right now, if your child is under 3 years old, is building over 1 million new neural connections every single second. Every single second. That number is so staggering that most of us just let it wash over us without really absorbing what it means. It means that every moment of every day, your baby's brain is actively constructing itself based on the environment around it. Every sound, every face, every texture, every interaction is shaping the actual physical architecture of who this child will become. That's not poetry, that's neuroscience. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because during this period of explosive growth, the brain is incredibly powerful, yes, but it is also incredibly vulnerable. The same openness that allows it to absorb so much so fast also makes it highly susceptible to disruption. Researchers studying newborn and infant brain development have been sounding alarms for years about inflammation, overstimulation, and environmental factors that most parents simply aren't warned about. Let's break these down one by one, because you deserve the full picture. We need to talk about inflammation first, because it's one of the most underappreciated threats to developing brains. Now, when most people hear the word inflammation, they think of a swollen ankle or a sore throat. But neuroinflammation, inflammation occurring inside the brain itself, is an entirely different beast. Scientists at institutions like the Hudson Institute of Medical Research have been studying what happens when the developing brain gets hit with inflammatory responses during the perinatal period, which covers pregnancy and the first month after birth. The findings are genuinely alarming. Here's how it works. Inflammation is normally the body's defense mechanism. Something goes wrong, the immune system fires up, inflammation shows up to deal with the problem. That's the system working as intended. But when that response goes unchecked inside a developing brain, when it becomes what researchers call unbridled inflammation, the consequences can be severe and long-lasting. We're talking about disrupted neural development, increased risk for conditions like cerebral palsy, developmental delays affecting movement, vision, and hearing, and cognitive problems that may not become obvious until the child starts school. The brain during those early months is so actively under construction that any significant disruption to that process leaves marks. What triggers this neuroinflammation? Several things that are more common than most parents realize. Maternal infection during pregnancy can set off an inflammatory cascade that reaches the developing fetal brain. Oxygen deprivation during or after birth is another trigger. Exposure to certain toxins. Even the stress response from prolonged cortisol exposure can contribute. The critical insight coming from current research is that timing matters enormously. The earlier these inflammatory processes are identified and addressed, the better the outcomes for the child. But here's the hopeful part of that finding. Treatment at any stage is better than no treatment. The brain retains more plasticity than we once believed, which means intervention is always worth pursuing, even when it happens later than we'd like. Now let's shift gears, because while inflammation from infection and illness is one category of threat, there's another one that's walking into living rooms around the world every single day through a screen. And this one is trickier to talk about because it looks like entertainment, it looks like education, and it's something almost every parent with young children is doing. Here's what's happening inside your baby's brain when they're watching fast-paced, hyper-stimulating content. A baby's brain is literally wired for slow, human-paced interaction. Eye contact, back and forth vocalization, gentle touch, faces that move and express emotion at human speed. That's what the developing brain is calibrated to receive and process. When you replace that with rapid scene cuts happening every 1 to 3 seconds, exaggerated colors, loud music, flashing backgrounds, and constant movement, you're not feeding the brain in a very specific neurological way. The brain responds to this kind of intense stimulation by releasing dopamine. Dopamine feels good. It creates excitement and engagement, which is exactly why babies seem to love these shows. But dopamine spikes followed by crashes create a cycle. The brain starts expecting high-intensity input. It starts craving it. And then when normal life shows up, a simple wooden block, a quiet story, a parent's calm face, it genuinely does not register as interesting anymore. Not because your child is broken, but because their brain has been conditioned to require a certain intensity of input just to feel stimulated at all. Parents often describe what follows as behavioral problems. The baby cries when the screen turns off. They're restless and irritable. They can't focus on simpler activities. They have trouble settling down to sleep. They throw tantrums that seem disproportionate. But these aren't character flaws. These are neurological responses. The brain is in a state of dysregulation, and a dysregulated brain cannot learn, cannot form strong emotional bonds as effectively, cannot develop the executive function skills like memory, planning, and self-control that are being built during exactly this window of life. Research consistently shows that language development specifically depends on back-and-forth interaction, not passive watching. Babies learn to talk by having conversations, even before they can produce words themselves. Someone talks, they respond with a sound. Someone responds back. That conversational loop, repeated thousands of times, teaches the brain how language works. A screen cannot do that. A screen delivers words at a baby, but does not respond to the baby. And a developing brain knows the difference, even if the baby cannot tell you. So where does this leave you as a parent? Because I want to be very clear about something. None of this is about making you feel guilty. If you've been using screens to get through the day, you're not a failure. Parenting is extraordinarily hard, and these apps and shows were literally designed by teams of people with the explicit goal of keeping your child glued to that screen. You were up against something engineered to be compelling. Now you just have information they didn't give you, and information is power. Here's what the research and clinical guidance actually supports. First, minimize screen exposure for children under 2 as much as realistically possible. The brain simply benefits more from human interaction during this window. Second, when screens do happen, slower-paced content causes significantly less disruption than fast-paced, hyper-stimulating shows. Shows that use realistic pacing, show problem-solving, and model emotional conversations are categorically different from rapid-fire cartoons. Third, prioritize the activities that genuinely build the brain. Physical play with real objects, being read to every single day, singing, outdoor time, independent play that builds the ability to self-regulate, and most importantly, face-to-face time with you. Your face, your voice, and your presence are not just nice extras. They are the primary inputs that a developing brain is designed to receive and build itself around. Every time you respond to your baby's sounds, every time you make eye contact, every time you read a story with expression, you are literally constructing neural architecture. You are shaping who this person will be. The other critical piece of this is knowing when to seek help. If you notice signs in your infant of unusual irritability, developmental delays, difficulty with sensory experiences, or any concerns raised at pediatric checkups, don't wait. Early intervention in almost every area of neurodevelopment produces dramatically better outcomes than intervention that comes later. The research on neuroinflammation alone makes this point powerfully. Earlier action, better results. That principle applies broadly. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Your baby's brain is extraordinary, and it's extraordinarily delicate at the same time. It is being built right now, in real time, by everything in your child's environment. You have more influence over that process than almost any other factor in your child's life. That's not pressure. That's actually an incredible gift. You don't need perfect parenting. You need present parenting. The moments of genuine connection, the simple interactions, the consistency, the safety, those are what build resilient, capable, emotionally intelligent human beings. Your attention is the most developmental tool your child will ever have access to. Use it generously, because these years pass faster than anyone warns you. And the brain being built inside your child right now is the one they'll carry for the rest of their life. Don't forget to grab the free download below. It turns today's insight into a simple step-by-step you can use in the moment.